Hey everybody, I want to talk about taxes that are hidden from most people, meaning, the big surprises as you enter retirement, the difference between the taxation of your W-2 income through most of your life to now having to pay those taxes. It always feels like you're paying more because you actually have to write out the check in most cases. So let's talk about the most common surprises when it comes to taxation in retirement. The first thing I like to do is make sure we understand what the difference is with adjusted gross income versus MAGI, a modified adjusted gross income. And this is a for the most part thing because as funny as it sounds, modified adjusted gross income is not an exact figure with exact numbers. Some use these things, some use those things, some don't, some do. It's a nightmare. But in general, we have to understand the difference. So your adjusted gross income actually shows up on your tax return, okay? It's on line 11 currently until they change the tax return, which they do every so often, on Form 1040. So the basic tax return, just go right to that first page, go down to line 11, you should see your adjusted gross income. And really what it is it's your gross income, the full income, minus all the above line deductions, which this year we've added a bunch of new ones. So the lots of changes going on. If you haven't attended my tax class, take my tax classes. I've got two of them, kind of part one, part two. One's about everything you need to know about taxation in retirement. And then the second one is how to use it so you can become more efficient. So there's also some phase out rules of these adjustments, too much income, less deductions. That's the type of stuff that happens out there. So then to come up with your modified adjusted gross income, really you got to take your AGI and start adding back some of the things that you took away. Okay. So things like your IRA deductions, you got to add those back in. Student loan interest, add it back in. Foreign earned income, tax exempt interest. The non-taxable portion of your Social Security, you have to add back in. Tuition and fees, self-employed, passive losses, HSA, adoption benefits, and now even tips and overtime and qualified auto loan interest. You know, look, it's basically your raw income. Now, depending on what you're going to use this number for, some may use more of these and some may use less of these. One of the interesting things that does change this, though, is 401k contributions. Those actually lower both your AGI and your modified adjusted gross income because you don't add those back in because they're coming out of your raw paycheck. So that's interesting advantage that an employee has versus a self-employed person in this case. So why do we need to know this? Well, it's going to affect a lot of things in retirement. So the first thing that you're going to find out about is IRMAA. Okay, IRMAA is the shadow tax, which is actually really a wealth tax. All right. So we do actually have a lot of wealth tax. The more money you make, the less deductions you have, but you're also going to start paying more on your Medicare premiums. So, well, okay, you make millions a year, a little adjustment to your Medicare premiums is certainly justified. But this is very black and white, and you can't control it. That's the hard part about this. So those people that are trying to control their budgets and maybe doing Roth conversions or things like that, those things all affect your modified adjusted gross income and your AGI for that matter. So we have to know that in 2024's tax return, the AGI plus all the modifications to make it your modified adjusted gross income, it's 2024's that they're looking at to come up with how much you have to pay in 2026. So that means your income in 2026 is not going to affect this until 2028. And the chart for 2028 is not going to come out until late 2027. So there's nothing you can do to control this. We don't know the chart that you're subject to. Now, we could make some normal adjustments for inflation, but quite often they will drastically change these. We went through some big changes in the last decade or so. We've had some major changes to these charts. So right now, as it stands, if your total modified adjusted gross income as a single person is less than 109 or 218 for a married couple, then you have the base Medicare premium and Part D premium. Then as you have more income, you will have to, and if it's a dollar more, boom, you move up to the high. It's not prorated. No. If you have $218,000.01, that's right. Your Part B premiums are going to go up and your Part D premiums are going to go up. So we got to make sure we know about these things. This is something that a lot of people aren't aware of. And the biggest mistakes I see is the arbitrary Roth conversions that push you over this, or not being proactive enough. And then all of a sudden your required distributions push you into higher levels and you didn't even need the income. That's not being efficient. Be as efficient as you can be. The day you retire, this stuff needs to be planned out. You need to be doing the best you can to reduce that IRA money. And understanding IRMAA becomes important in that whole game. That's part of financial planning. That's what a good advisor gets paid for. When you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, you don't need any of this stuff. So all the good advisors do is really just take your money and invest it. But as you're getting ready for retirement, this stuff all starts coming into play. Managing taxation comes into play, and that's the difference between a good advisor as you're going into retirement versus that good advisor that serviced you and grew your money just fine. But they may not understand the rest of this stuff. So, net investment income tax. More for the wealthy people, but average everyday people hit this because of maybe selling a house or, look, here's the thing, terrible advisors out there, if you transfer accounts, sometimes they just hit sell on everything and cause taxation. Shouldn't be doing that. Transferring your accounts from one advisor to another advisor in and of itself should not be a taxable event. A bad advisor, unknowingly or knowingly and not caring, may cause taxable events. Okay. So in a case like mine, I'm going to review the portfolio before we sell anything. We don't want to cause taxable events without knowing what we're getting ourselves into, and then strategically adjusting the portfolio as needed. Because you will get an extra 3.8% tax if you go over 200,000 for single filers, 250 for joint. So this is where penalty to be married is. Some people see the marriage penalty. Two single people are going to have a lot more room than one married couple. But this is on investment gains. So not your pension income, not your Social Security income, not your self-employed profits, not your W-2 wages. This comes from your capital gains, your dividends, things like that. That's where we're going to start paying an additional 3.8%. So there it is, things that cause this: sale of stocks and bonds and mutual funds. I love this one. So you may not know this yet, and we'll talk about this coming up. If you own a mutual fund, somebody is in charge of managing that portfolio. You don't have to sell to incur long-term capital gains, short-term capital gains, qualified dividends, non-qualified dividends. Whatever that manager does within the portfolio, you get taxed for. And you can't control that. And trust me, during the pandemic, I saw people with, not kidding, six-figure 1099s, over $100,000 in capital gains. So buying and holding is great. I'm a big believer in investing from a buy and hold standpoint for a lot of people. But if you're not proactively working with that and you choose to buy and hold mutual funds, you're not going to control that taxation. The pandemic hits and boom, they can just sell off the entire portfolio. Even though you didn't sell a thing, you're going to get hit with all those taxes. Sale of investment, real estate, sale of interest in partnerships and S corps, all that kind of stuff. So an extra 3.8% tax once you go over certain thresholds with your investment income. All right, RMDs and modified adjusted gross income. How do they relate? Well, first of all, when you're forced to take money out of an IRA, that is going to cause your modified adjusted gross income to go up. It also is going to make your AGI go up, which means then you've got to worry about things like your IRMAA and other related things. So we got to be careful about this. And that's why I said you got to be proactive with that IRA money. How do I get it out at the least amount of taxation possible? And that includes the adjustment to your Medicare. So make sure that we're paying attention to that. The amount you are forced to take out of IRA gets bigger and bigger and bigger every single year. And so if you're doing a great job living your retirement within the 12% tax bracket, total income 136,000, and then all of a sudden you're forced to take 50,000 out as a required distribution, it pushes you into 22%. Now here's the thing. If you need that money to enjoy your retirement, it is what it is. If you need $180,000, $200,000 a year to enjoy your retirement, you are going to pay some higher taxes unless you're a lucky one that has lots of Roth or an enormous qualified dividend portfolio. Then we can manage taxation at a much lower rate. But those take unique circumstances. Some people are pushed into higher taxes and don't need the money. You enjoy your retirement on 130,000, but you've got 180,000 worth of income. That just isn't efficient. So we want to be proactive. The less IRA money you have, the less of a required distribution you have, the more you're going to control that taxation going forward. Taxation of Social Security benefits. Yes, this is a big surprise to a lot of people because, especially in the last year, we were sold on the fact that we weren't going to have to pay taxes on our Social Security. And that was a complete twist of the truth and is not real. So here's how the estimation calculation is for paying taxes on your Social Security. Okay. So it's real simple. Add up half your Social Security plus all other forms of income, including tax-free interest. Right now, not Roth. So if you pulled out from your Roth, it's not included in this calculation. So all other forms of income, whether it's pension or IRA distributions or interest earned or qualified dividends, any other form of income. So half your Social Security plus all other forms of income, and then go to this chart. If the total is less than 32 married and 25 single, you won't pay taxes on your Social Security. Congratulations. Then look how quick this phase is. Okay, so you go from 32,000 to 44,000 in this calculation. Okay, so when I say in this calculation, you use that half of your Social Security plus all other forms of income. And now from 32,000, boop, right there, to 44,000, that's when you phase from 0 all the way up to 85. So you can see how sensitive your tax return is. If you're managing a very low income retirement, you've got 32,000 total or 25,000 single, and maybe you now all of a sudden have to take a required distribution, or somebody told you had to do a Roth conversion. Oh, now the problem is you make that withdrawal and you go from owing tax or no taxes on your Social Security to all of a sudden owing taxes on 85% of your Social Security. Not only did you owe taxes on that Roth conversion or that withdrawal from your IRA, but it caused the taxation of your Social Security. So a lot of people get surprised, especially lower income people surviving in retirement in these low income areas. Holy cow, your tax return might go from owing nothing to owing a whole bunch of money to nothing to a whole bunch of money and bounce all over the place. Anytime somebody complains about that to me, this is the reason. It is the most sensitive part of our tax return. So we got to be careful about that. We got to understand that and the interactions we choose to have with this stuff. All right, so there's the capital gains, long-term capital gains, and qualified dividends, okay? So taxation of after-tax savings. So this is your money that is not Roth or IRA. It's everything else. This seems to be a big misunderstanding, mystery. People don't seem to understand this, including advisors. Advisors that don't specialize in working with retirees. And when I say advisors, I'm talking actually legitimate licensed advisors, not some salesman running around. Good, legitimate advisors that specialize in the retirement phase, they should completely understand all of this. But the vast majority of the rest of the world does not, including investors and advisors. So here's the thing. You have this big pile of money that is not IRA and not Roth, hopefully, right? You save this money, you've already paid taxes on the principal, and now, depending on how you invest it, it's going to get taxed completely differently. Okay, if I put it in corporate bonds, it pays out interest, and that interest is taxed at full income tax rates. Whereas if I bought dividend paying stocks that were US stocks and I chose to hold those, not buy and sell, just buy and hold, now they pay out qualified dividends. US stocks that you're holding pay out qualified dividends. Whereas you go choose to buy a mutual fund that promises to pay all these wonderful dividends, and the vast majority that come out are non-qualified because they keep selling them right after they get their dividend, which makes them non-qualified. And then you got to pay capital gains, whether it's short term or long term, depends on how long they held the position. So you get subject to all this extra taxation in that mutual fund, whereas you could have chose to buy an ETF, an exchange trade fund that typically does not have active management. It just owns these things. Qualified dividend portfolio, buy and hold, might make a once a year adjustment to the portfolio, but that's about it. Now you can control your taxation. Okay, so investing, non-qualified dividends, short-term capital gains, and interest, that's all taxed at full high tax rates. Okay, variable annuities is another trap for this kind of money. Okay, the stock market, when invested properly in this type of money, is tax advantaged. Long-term capital gains and qualified dividends are taxed at way less taxes. Okay. While you're paying 12% on the ordinary income taxes, you're paying zero here. When you're paying 22 on your ordinary income taxes, you're paying 15% here. Then you've got your 20s and 30s, you're still blowing it away. You're paying way less taxes here with your long-term capital gains and qualified dividends. Long-term capital gains, buy and hold for a year, then sell. That's a long term. Okay, 1 year. Qualified dividends, US stocks that you're buying and holding. You have to have it 60 days before and after the ex-dividend date. It's that simple. Okay. So you choose to then take that tax advantage type investing and then you give it to a variable annuity thinking, hey, it's still in the stock market with some great guarantees from the insurance company. Well, I got news for you because it is a tax deferred annuity. All variable annuities are tax-deferred annuities. That turns all of that growth into interest. So now instead of paying the capital gains tax rates, the qualified dividend tax rates, you're going to pay full tax rates. Significantly more taxation when you go to withdraw money from these types of annuities. So you go from good taxation to bad taxation by doing that. Mutual funds, you can't control that taxation. Okay, you can sit there and buy and hold a mutual fund, but the manager within can buy and sell and buy and sell and hand the taxation to you. So be careful about owning those in this part of your portfolio. Doesn't mean these are bad investments. It means you've got to be careful in your after-tax portfolio. Your money that is not your money that's not IRA money, the money that's not Roth money, all this other money, you got to be careful about those variable annuities. You got to be careful about those mutual funds. You got to be careful about non-qualified dividends, short-term capital gains, interest-bearing investments. These are all things that'll cause taxation that you don't want. If you control it properly, you'll be using this tax bracket. Much better, much lower taxation. And for some people, you got to even be careful with municipal bonds. Although people in higher taxation, municipal bonds have a little more value too. People in lower taxation usually have no reason to be using municipal bonds. When you're in higher taxation, you have to worry about things called the alternative minimum tax. They will also cause the taxation of your Social Security. So there's a lot of complication mixed up with these municipal bonds. So be careful about it. Make sure it's worth it for your situation. Mostly in moderation, it's perfectly fine, but thinking it's so wonderful because it's tax-free, well, unfortunately, it can cause taxation. Okay, it changes your modified adjusted gross income, right? So it causes the IRMAA. It causes the taxation of Social Security. So these are things that we have to understand. So we got to be careful about this. So you're investing in your after-tax part of your portfolio is where everything has to change. We have different rules in this part of the portfolio. Okay. If you want to have a qualified dividend stock portfolio, if you want to have a dividend portfolio, this is the best place to do it instead of the IRA and Roth. I'm not saying don't do it in the IRA and Roth. I'm saying if you're going to use a dividend portfolio to fund your retirement, then this is where you want it because you're getting the tax advantages here. IRA, no matter how you invest, it's always going to get taxed at full tax rates. Roth, no matter how you invest, it's always going to come out tax free. So the only place you can do these good dividend portfolios is in this part. Long-term capital gains, the buy and hold growth mode. That's perfectly fine too. But don't use mutual funds. In your IRA, it's perfectly fine. Use all the mutual funds you want. Just don't do it here. So that's why it's so important to have somebody that understands this part of the investing strategies out there because each part of your portfolio should be invested differently. Okay? This should be building a portfolio for your purpose, for you funding retirement. Everything changes. It's real easy to manage a portfolio in growth mode. Just buy the Nasdaq and the S&P 500 ETFs. Don't touch it and let it grow. I'm not quite sure you need to pay somebody to manage that. But where the rubber meets the road is stuff like this as you're heading off into retirement, making that transition, and then really, landing on your feet in retirement. Getting these efficiencies really can make a huge difference in retirement. All right. I hope that helps. That's a little insight into some of these taxes that people get surprised by. And it sounds so complicated. Again, got full classes on taxation, and I try to make them as entertaining as possible. Go to fpfeaz.org and sign up for one of our classes. You could also go to our website, sesweb.net. We've got our archived classes on there as well. Give us a call anytime, subscribe, smash that like button, do all those wonderful things, share it with friends. Subscribe to the channel. I try to create new videos every single week, so lots of new content. Got over 300 videos on our channel. Explore it, have fun with it. I've got as many topics as I possibly can. All right, everybody, happy to help. Give us a call. You can go to yourinvestmentcounselor.com and schedule a free meet and greet with me if you like. Appreciate it. Have a great one. Thank you. Bye now.